What if you aren't addicted to porn? What if you're using porn to escape something deeper? If you don't know me, my name is Krishna. I'm someone who quit his porn addiction after many, many years of struggling with it. And I'm someone who's just teaching the lessons that I personally learned along the way. And I make these videos so that hopefully you can quit too, and you don't have to suffer as much as I did. So I want you to just imagine this. It's 2017, 2018, and I'm around maybe 8 years old, 9 years old. And me and my family, we go on a trip to Texas, right? As our whole family, me, my two brothers, and my parents, we all decided to go on a trip to Texas during the summer, right? And so we get there, we get to our hotel, and one day when we're all just lounging around in our hotel, I get the bright idea to grab my mom's phone. I didn't even have my own phone at the time, right? Because I was freaking 8 years old. Why would you give an 8-year-old a phone? I had the bright idea to grab my mother's phone, take it, go into the closet. All those hotels, they have those closets. Yeah, I went into the closet with my mother's phone and I started looking at porn right then and there in the closet whilst my whole family, my brothers, my mother, my dad, they were all sitting in the next room. Imagine that. Now, here's what's really, really interesting about this is because a few seconds after that, they open the closet door, right? They open the little wardrobe door. They slide it open this way to check what I'm doing. And guess what they find? Guess what they find on the phone, right? Now, obviously, they caught me, right? I'm 8 years old. I'm hiding in a closet. I'm looking at porn on my mother's phone. Obviously, I'm going to be embarrassed as hell, right? This is what's really interesting because first of all, my dad didn't care. Interestingly enough, parents didn't care. Neither did my brothers, which is weird. They might have found it weird for a second. They looked at it. Sorry, what the hell is this? Think about how messed up that is. Imagine you're freaking 8 years old, and you're hiding. Imagine if you had an 8-year-old son, right? You had an 8-year-old son, and that 8-year-old son is in a closet watching pornography. What would you think? What would you do? How would you handle this situation, right? This is very, very interesting to think about. Is that they just didn't care. They didn't care. They didn't try and stop it, right? Fast forward a few years later, it's COVID. We're all in our house. We're always in our house, right? Nobody leaves the house anymore because we're afraid that we're going to get a virus and that we're going to die, right? That was COVID. Nobody left the house. And so when you're being abused by your father in a house where he's constantly there, you're going to turn to something to cope. You're going to turn to something to escape, right? Because to be quite honest, it's impossible to live an entire life without finding some way to cope. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that there's better ways to cope. Some ways to cope are better than others. The way that I coped was just watching copious amounts of porn for hours, hours per day. Being on school Zoom calls watching this stuff, playing video games in your parents' living room whilst watching porn. Think about that. I remember this would happen quite often is that every time, sometimes my dad would just beat my ass, right? That's what happens in an abusive relationship. You cause a trigger, you do something that they don't necessarily agree with, and they start beating you up, right? Or they start threatening you, they start threatening violence against you, they start throwing insults at you, right? These are all forms of abuse. And every time this would happen, I would always, every single time, I would run to the bathroom, right? Because the bathroom, weirdly enough, the bathroom was where I felt the most safe. Because obviously, who's going to come into the bathroom and just disturb you, right? That's kind of weird. People don't do that unless they're weird. I would go into the bathroom and I'd start jerking off. I'm not even joking right here. This is messed up, right? This is just messed up, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to say out loud, right? Because nobody wants to say this. Nobody wants to talk about these type of things. But this is exactly what needs to be talked about. This is exactly what you need to talk about as well, because the main things that we can take away from that, the main things that we can take away from that experience of me seeing porn so young, no, nobody attempted to stop it, and the addiction, the infatuation for it just kept growing and growing and growing until eventually 3 years later, a couple of years later, you're there just watching porn in your parents' living room, right? One of the main lessons that we can learn is that porn is just a symptom. The real disease really is just emotional disconnection. Or really, we can actually just say disconnection. It's a disconnection from everything. It's a disconnection from yourself. It's a disconnection from other people. It's a disconnection from the reality that you live in. If the reality that you live in sucks, then of course you're going to find some way to cope with that. Of course you're going to find some way to lessen that pain. And so what do you turn to? Well, the easy solution is drugs. Because, again, not only do people want to run away from things that they want to run. No, sorry. Not only do people want to run away from things that they don't want, they want to run towards something that they want. Right? This makes sense. And so, people run away from things that they don't want. People run away from things that they don't want to deal with. Right? Because the second thing that we can take away from this is that most guys use porn to numb feelings that they don't know how to face. Sadness, loneliness, depression, anxiety. You don't know how to face these things because they're hard to face. I couldn't face them. I couldn't face them for freaking 3-4 years when I was addicted to this stuff. It's especially hard to face those things in an abusive environment. It's hard to face those things when your dad is constantly threatening you. It's hard to face those things when you're in an environment where you're not even allowed to really feel. You're not even allowed to feel. So how are you going to face those feelings? It doesn't make sense. All of those emotions, all of those negative feelings, all of that gets covered with stimulation, right? Because a lot of people just don't want to take accountability for stuff. A lot of people don't want to say, yeah, I am sad. Yeah, I am lonely. Yeah, I do feel depressed. I do feel anxious. I do feel hopeless. They don't want to say that. Because saying that would mean that there's something up with you. There's a problem, right? There's an issue. There's a fundamental issue that needs to be fixed. And so to protect our egos, we don't say that. Instead, we might make excuses like, oh yeah, porn's actually not that bad. It's actually kind of healthy for you because, it reduces the risk of prostate cancer or whatever all these random studies will cite. It's not even that accurate, by the way, if you actually look into the study. Anyways, healing starts when you face the things that you're avoiding. Because, and actually Carl Jung said, if you don't know him, you can basically think about him as a philosopher. He says that if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. If you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. You will just say, oh yeah, this is just how I am. Oh yeah, this is just how the way things are. Okay, well, yes, this is how the way things are. This is how you are. Do you want to change it? Do you want to keep living the exact same life? That's up to you. And if you're still watching this, the answer is probably that you do want to change it. Because when you treat it like a symptom, it keeps coming back. It's just going to keep showing up. If you keep treating the symptom, you never treat the root cause. If you treat it like the root cause, if you treat those things that you're not dealing with like the root cause, then you heal. When you treat the symptom, it doesn't do anything. Arguably, it just prolongs the problem just for a little bit more because the symptom keeps coming back. If you treat the root cause, then the symptom starts going away. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Nothing is going to change if you don't change anything. This obviously makes sense. And so it's not just about finding another video of how to get to day 90 of NoFap or whatever the fuck. All these feel-good videos that you see, it's, oh yeah, when you get to day 90, you'll be able to shoot lightning on your fingers, you'll be able to levitate. It's not like that at all. It's not like that. Because the real progress, the only reason that I've been able to not watch porn for many years, I quit porn fully probably like 2-3 years ago. I haven't watched it since. Never, not once. The only reason I've been able to do that is because I've been able to not fully heal, but I've been able to make some good progress in healing the things that I was running away from. For me, it was an abusive household. It was the things that came with that. It was self-doubt, it was loneliness, it was blame, it was depression, it was anxiety, it was poor mental health. All of those things, porn was a symptom of that. And so the action item that I can give you, the actionable step that I can give you, is I just want you to just sit in silence for 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking you to do, is just sit in silence for 10 minutes. Because when it's just you and your breathing, when there's no music, there's no phones, there's no technology, it's just you staring at the wall. Pay attention to what surfaces. What does your mind say? How do you feel? Does your mind start producing these negative thoughts? Does your mind start feeling bad? Do you start feeling this slight, dull hopelessness and sadness that comes from depression? The things that you aren't willing to face in the silence of your own dark thoughts, that is what you will keep avoiding. You will keep avoiding those things. I think there's a saying, I actually don't know who says this, but it's a lot of man's problems come from man's inability to sit and stare at a wall, right? Because when you're addicted to porn, you're also addicted to other things. You're addicted to video games, you're addicted to your phone, you're addicted to music, you're listening to music all the time, you constantly got headphones in. You know, you're constantly in moments of when you have opportunities of stillness. What do? Do you be still, or do you grab your phone? These are symptoms. These are not the real problems. They're symptoms of the real problem, which is your poor mental health. If you want an actual step-by-step guide, a step-by-step thing that you can follow, literally, you just do these steps, and you can finally quit porn, then you can check the school link in the description down below. I hope this video helped you. Take care.